Hello again, it's Dan Reel from Fraudclosure 101. Hopefully you're doing well, and this is probably one of the most important videos you're going to see if you have a securitized mortgage and you're in foreclosure. This episode is called, Dude, Where's My Mortgage? Now, there's an old way this used to work, and now there's the really radical and different new way. A lot of people, especially those who are just consumers and unfamiliar with basic real estate property law, just so you're aware, you have two components when you actually get a loan from a bank. I mean, the first is the note, which is the IOU, which is the instrument where you promise to pay the bank back the money that you used to buy your house. The mortgage is actually the thing that's recorded on the land records, the document that says if you don't pay back the note, the bank has the right to enforce the mortgage and take your house if you don't pay the loan. Old way, you get both these documents, they would go to the original lender, the lender would record a true copy on the land records, and the lender would put these documents in a vault where they would be safe, because they're the originals, they're on the bearer paper, they're the actual instruments on which they, if they need to, can collect. And when you paid off the mortgage, the bank would give you back the original and say it's paid, and they would file a release of mortgage on the land records. End of story. And if they did assign it, they would assign the original, to the next person in line. Now, it isn't illegal to actually assign a mortgage or a note. However, you do run into problems when you start doing things, say, like signing copies of negotiable instruments. Now, you might want to look up the term negotiable instrument, and if you happen to be in a foreclosure in a securitized mortgage, it couldn't hurt to bone up on Uniform Commercial Code. But just to make this really simple for you, we have this thing, or actually the banks invented this thing. It's called Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems Incorporated. MERS for short, that's the acronym right here. In a securitized mortgage situation, MERS would act as the, and I'm doing air quotes behind this camera, nominee for the lender. So they would say, okay, we're the nominee. MERS would actually take the originals of both of these documents and absolutely copy them and then absolutely destroy the originals after they place the MERS identification number on them. So the one thing you need to know is, guess what? The negotiable instrument that you had signed, that you were the maker of, that said you owe the lender money, it's destroyed. And MERS did it. And actually, if you look up MERS online, you do any research, MERS even issues literature to prospective lenders that want to get in on this. And they actually say, yes, we destroy the original notes, we put in our database, and what they do is they sell copies of the note and the mortgage into special purpose vehicles. So what they're doing is they're selling copies of a negotiable instrument that you created, that you were the maker of. And of course, each assignee down the line is essentially in those same shoes. Now, the reason they created MERS is there was this annoying thing called recording fees. So they wanted to supposedly save all this money recording all of these assignments of interest on the land records. Connecticut courts are pretty clear, and I am positive this is the same everywhere else throughout the country that has courts dealing with property law issues, that land records are supposed to be an authentic and accurate oracle of people who've, say, laid claim to a property or have interest in a property. But the problem is, a lot of those assignments with securitized mortgage, especially the intervening ones prior to foreclosure, they haven't been recorded. That's a problem. That's not to say there isn't somebody out there who could file a suit against a homeowner on the note. But the big problem is you've got a whole bunch of stuff that happens in between here, and when the actual recording of the assignment of mortgage and all that stuff is done after the foreclosure generally starts in Connecticut, it becomes a question of standing, and again, that's what makes a lot of these cases business records cases in so many respects. The problem you run into, and I think this analogy would make sense to the average homeowner, is, you've probably written a check at some point in your life, okay? Now, imagine if we weren't talking about a note. We were talking about a different negotiable instrument called a check. Now, if you wrote a check to somebody and you wrote on the back of it, and you endorsed it and you gave it to somebody else and said, deposit in your bank account, that would be perfectly legal. On the other hand, if you took that same check, copied it like these guys did, stored it on your computer, and then sold 5 copies to your 5 closest friends, and told your 5 closest friends, run to the bank and cash this check, you think the bank would have a problem with that? Well, that's what they're doing here. Now, there's certainly an argument to be made that, yes, there is a statute in Connecticut that has to do with lost and, destroyed and stolen notes. But generally, if you read the statute, in my opinion, again, this is not legal advice, consult an attorney, and I wouldn't be surprised if you find a lot of attorneys that agreed. Maybe there'd be an issue with the way they did it. Because the thing is, it's one thing, say, if you're the original lender, right, and your bank happened to catch on fire, and the mortgage happened to be on the counter and it wasn't in the safe at the time. That would be one thing. That would be a just and equitable purpose for a law like that. Because things happen. On the other hand, these guys make things happen. That's the issue. So, if you're okay with the new way of doing things, in my opinion, you are perfectly okay with writing a check, destroying it, and selling 5 copies to your closest 5 buddies, and then having them all go to the bank to cash the check. By the way, in these investment vehicles and these pools, sometimes these mortgages are sold to different entities. And I'm talking about one mortgage being sold to different entities. It happens. So, again, there's a reason to just, emphasize discovery and try to find out what happened, but the bottom line, there's a question that the lender's got answered. Dude, where's my mortgage? And of course, more importantly, dude, where's the note? Because the mortgage follows the note, regardless of where you are. And if the note's been destroyed and the mortgage has been destroyed, well, gee, that's kind of a question as to who really has interest in this thing, doesn't it? It's not about a free home, it's about who has standing. So bear that in mind. Any questions, comments, headlinecopy@gmail.com. If you want some clarification or a different video, we'd be happy to post it, and we'll go from there. Hope you're well.